roundup of Wednesday's top news, plus a discussion of the day's main topic with an expert. That's what I promise you in the next half hour. You're watching Freedom Our Time. I'm Mikhail Baranov in the studio. Hello? NATO is increasing its defense spending and stepping up support for Ukraine, recognizing the threats coming from Russia. Today, the foreign ministers of the alliance's 32 countries are discussing aid to Kyiv. At the bloc's headquarters, they're summing up the year's results and welcoming the Ukrainian delegation led by Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha. And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, speaking at a press conference ahead of the meeting in Brussels, stated that Ukraine's security is closely linked to the security of the alliance's member countries. That's why the North Atlantic bloc is interested in the success of the U.S. peace initiatives.
We have had successful meetings in Geneva and Miami between the American and Ukrainian teams. Last night, a meeting took place in Moscow. I won't comment on every stage of this process. What's important is that there is a peace process. I hope it will lead to results. And if it drags on or doesn't lead to results, the best way to put pressure on the Russians is to do two things. First, make it clear to them that the rapid flow of weapons to Ukraine will continue. Second, it's necessary to ensure the effectiveness of economic sanctions.
Step up peace efforts and strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities. With these goals in mind, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha arrived at NATO headquarters in Brussels. He's taken part in a working lunch of the Ukraine NATO Council and has already held talks with the alliance's Secretary General Mark Rutte. Our special correspondent for Freedom TV in Europe, Vitaly Sizov, found out what agreements were reached with Kyiv's allies. He's reporting from the scene. Vitaly, good afternoon. We're waiting for details about the meeting. Who has already made statements and what did they say?
Mikhailo, the lunch has ended, and we are waiting for the final statement from Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha. But for now, we know that the largest aid package today was announced by Norway. It'll allocate $500 million to purchase American weapons for Ukraine under the Pearl program. Yesterday, at a press conference, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that he wants to raise at least $1 billion per month for this initiative. And we can see that there has been some progress in this direction.
We all want peace in Ukraine and welcome peace efforts, but it must be a just and lasting peace on Kyiv's terms. And for that to become a reality, we need to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities. Today, while the war is ongoing, and possibly even after it ends, when a peace agreement is reached, we need a strong and well-armed Ukraine. That is why we are very proud to join this joint Polish, German, Norwegian initiative to allocate the Pearl package worth $500 million. At the very core of the extensive discussions were also the various peace initiatives proposed by the United States of America, which aim to de-escalate the ongoing conflict. However, for Ukraine's steadfast allies, it has become unequivocally clear that the government in Moscow is consistently not demonstrating any genuine or substantive willingness to engage in meaningful negotiations or pursue a peaceful resolution to the current crisis. And against this backdrop, it is necessary to increase assistance to Ukraine, and this assistance should not be limited to the defense sector. In recent days, we have seen President Trump striving for a just and lasting peace for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, for a ceasefire. But instead, we are witnessing how Putin simply wants escalation, war. We continue to witness powerful attacks that leave hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians without electricity. That is exactly why today I am announcing that the United Kingdom will allocate
an additional £10 million to support the repair of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And while Putin tries to turn off the lights and plunge Ukraine into darkness, we will keep working to turn the lights back on. Today in Brussels, Ukrainian delegations are working not only in the NATO format, in the Ukraine NATO Council format. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky has instructed the head of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov, to hold meetings with advisors to the leaders of EU countries, and not only on national security, but also on the issue of peace negotiations. Rustem Umarov reported on preparations for today's meetings in Brussels with advisors to European leaders on national security issues. The Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine will be joined at these meetings by the Chief of the General Staff, Andrii Sybiha. This is our ongoing coordination with our partners, and we are ensuring the full activity of the negotiation process. Ukrainian representatives will inform their colleagues in Europe about what became known after yesterday's contacts between the American side and Moscow, and will also discuss the European component of the necessary security architecture. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram. The results of today's major meeting, which included a session in the format of the North Atlantic Council and in the Council format, will be summarized in about half an hour by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and we will inform you about them in our upcoming news releases. Mikhailo.
Vitaly, thank you for the detailed information. We are waiting for updated news from Brussels. We were joined by Vitaly Sybiha, who spoke about the main topic of the day, the discussion on increasing military aid to Ukraine and the peace plan proposed by Washington. And now to other important news of the day. Russia continues to strike at Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Overnight into Wednesday, as a result of a drone attack, one of the energy facilities in the Odesa region caught fire. Equipment was damaged. An employee of the facility was injured and hospitalized in serious condition. According to local authorities, firefighters quickly extinguished the fire and continue to work on eliminating the consequences of this attack. Since early morning, the Russian army has been shelling one of the residential districts of Kherson with artillery. A local resident was killed. 3 private houses were partially destroyed. Another person was killed as a result of the evening artillery shelling by the Russians. There was also one injured after an explosive was dropped from a drone. A medical facility and a civilian vehicle were damaged. 2 people were killed and 3 were injured as a result of a Russian drone attack on the Dnipropetrovsk region. The Pavlorad district was state. 2 of the wounded are in serious condition. An 18-year-old man was hospitalized in moderate condition. According to local authorities, 1 residential house was partially destroyed and 6 more were damaged. In total, on Wednesday night, Russia launched 111 drones at Ukraine. More than 60 of them were Shaheds. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, the defenders of Ukraine's skies neutralized 83 drones of various types in the north, south, and east of the country. Hits were recorded at 13 locations, and at another site, debris from a downed aerial target fell. The Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 1,200 Russian occupiers over the past day. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Russian army losses since the start of the full-scale war have already exceeded 1,176,000 soldiers. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian forces destroyed 6 Russian tanks, 3 armored combat vehicles, 12 artillery systems, 3 multiple rocket launch systems, and 48 units of special automotive equipment. November set a record for the number of clashes on the front line, as noted by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. They emphasized that last month, Ukrainian forces repelled 5,990 Russian attacks. The hottest day was November 8th. On that day, Russian forces unsuccessfully tried to break through the positions of Ukraine's defense forces, 311 times. In the past 24 hours, there were 201 combat engagements recorded along the entire front line. The most difficult situation remains in the Pokrovsk direction. A quarter of all attacks by the occupying forces were repelled there. At the same time, military experts note that the losses of the Russian army are simply colossal.
After all, lately the enemy has been using either human wave or infantry assault tactics, or is using vehicles not suited for protecting personnel to move through the kill zone. Cars, motorcycles, and so on, so the chances of survival for Russian assault troops who do this? They move through the kill zone, and their chances of survival are slim. That's exactly why the president is talking about figures like 25,000 Russian servicemen killed. The total losses of the Russian army for the month of November are just over 30,000. So accordingly, the ratio of wounded to killed among the Russians is simply catastrophic.
French President Emmanuel Macron and the First Lady have arrived in Beijing for a 3-day state visit. A diplomatic meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping is scheduled for Thursday, and a more informal conversation will take place on Friday. During the visit, the French president intends to urge China to put pressure on Russia regarding a ceasefire in Ukraine. Several agreements between France and China are also planned to be signed. These will cover the fields of economy, energy, food industry, and aviation. Europe will completely abandon Russian gas. The EU Council and the European Parliament have finalized an agreement that provides for a complete halt to fuel imports from the Russian Federation by 2027. The document is a key element of the plan to strengthen Europe's energy independence. This concerns both liquefied and pipeline gas. A transition period is provided for existing contracts. This decision has been called historic in the EU.
We are turning this page, and we are turning it for good. This is the dawn of a new era, an era of complete energy independence for Europe from Russia. Many believe this is impossible, but the numbers speak for themselves. Imports of Russian gas, including via pipelines, have dropped from 45% at the start of the war to 13%. Coal imports have fallen from 51% at the start of the war to 0 now. And crude oil imports have decreased from 26% to 2%. I always knew we could do this, thanks to our unity of purpose, and by building on the incredible work of the past 3 years.
Now, back to the main topic of the day. A meeting of NATO foreign ministers is taking place in Brussels. On the agenda, among other things, is the issue of the draft peace agreement, as well as the role of the Allies in the post-war security of Ukraine.
Obviously, one of the main topics of today's discussion will be the peace negotiations. A long-term and lasting peace is impossible if evil continues to exist. On the contrary, we must ensure that the good guys have the opportunity to build a sovereign state based on freedom, independence, transparency, and full democracy. The Ukrainian people deserve this, and we are here to support them.
Russia poses a real threat, and it must be contained by all possible means. So the Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maria Malmer Stenergard, commented on Putin's statement yesterday about his readiness for war with Europe. At a meeting at NATO headquarters, the head of the Swedish Foreign Ministry stated that Sweden, as a country located close to Russia, has concluded that it is necessary to increase its own investments in the military sphere.
Until I see any changes, I will continue to conclude that Russia does not want peace. That is why we need to stick to a 2-point plan, increase support for Ukraine, and intensify pressure on Russia. And we need to hit on where it hurts most, their oil and gas revenues.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.